and welcome. I have the pleasure of introducing Val Grubb for this session titled Workforce 2030, Are You Ready? Val helps companies grow their bottom line by elevating employees from tactical thinkers to strategic leaders. She accomplishes this through keynote speaking, training, and executive coaching. For more information on Val's background and experience, please check out her bio in the conference app. If time allows, Val will take your questions. As we have attendees watching both in person and online, please be sure to use the microphone in the center of the room. We'll send any unanswered virtual questions to the speaker for post-event follow-up. And finally, after the session concludes, be sure to complete the survey for the session in the app. Please join me in welcoming Val.
Look at that. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I was looking at the schedule and I realized I'm the only thing standing between you and happy hour. And since I'm from New Orleans, I can tell you we take our happy hours very seriously. In fact, we're so much looking forward to having all of you next year in New Orleans. All right, so I'm excited to have this conversation today. And the key is somebody stopped me, at one of this is my third session, and somebody stopped me and said, Val, I'm just trying to get through this next year. Are you kidding me? Looking at workforce, looking at 2030? Why should I come to this? And I chatted with her and said, well, what I'm going to talk about is really going to help you get ready tomorrow. Look, I'm not necessarily talking a decade from now. Things that I'm going to be discussing are going to help you tomorrow, in 5 years, and also it's going to help you 10 years out from now as well. And in a lot of instances, you're actually going to have to start some of these things now. So let's jump in. And how I have structured this presentation is that I'm going to spend some time kind of talking about what the landscape's going to look like, so that you know landscape-wise what we're looking at. And then from there, I'm going to get into some hardcore action items. And the key is to pick one or two that you think will work, because there's going to be a bunch in here. We can't do them all. So there's an organization called the Business Roundtable. It's been around. It's an association for CEOs in the United States. And it has been around almost 50 years. And interesting, so in 1978, they started publishing the statement of the purpose of a corporation. And from 78 until 2019, they said that they said lots of things. One of the things they said was that the purpose of a corporation is to maximize value for shareholders. Interestingly, in 2019, they've redefined it. They've redefined it to say that it's for stakeholders. And those stakeholders, yes, they include shareholders, but it also includes employees. It includes our suppliers. It includes our communities. It encompasses anybody who we're around. And this was a really big deal, right? You can imagine a bunch of CEOs actually thinking beyond just profits. And so I thought this was a really interesting changeover. 181 CEOs, they're the largest organizations and companies in the United States, signed this manifesto. Thank you. See, they're excited. Everybody's excited. But I thought it was just an interesting idea, and this kind of sets us up, and we'll continue to kind of talk about this theme, that it's not just shareholders anymore. It's communities, and that community is pretty doggone broad. Now, as I kind of dug into this a little bit, what I thought was interesting was that in looking at long-term versus short-term thinking, and McKinsey and Bain did some really interesting indexing on this, and they looked at it from 2001 to 2014, and looked at companies who took a more long-term approach versus those that did more short-term. And I think this is important to note because what I'm trying to do is give you a little bit of ammunition, because it's, we know we need to focus on Workforce 2030, but sometimes these rascally CEOs don't quite have the vision that we have, right? And so some of this data hopefully will help you educate up. And I thought this was particularly interesting because it showed that those companies that did long-term thinking just did better in terms of revenue, did better in terms of earnings, and also market capitalization. Now, the flip side of this, which just makes this so awful, 87% of CEOs and company directors said that they felt pressure that they had to make a profit within 2 years. 65% of this same group said that they had to, that within 5 years, that if they felt that they didn't, that they would have to, that they would be canned. And 50% of this group said that they would stall a new product line or a new initiative in order to make quarterly earnings. So it's an interesting dichotomy between the fact, if we're thinking about, if we have this long-term strategic approach, we know that we're going to be 47% better in revenue. Now, they said, and what makes for and what's most impressive about this long-term thinking is that those companies that did, even during this downturn, they were putting in 50% more into R&D. So they didn't stop growing just because of the fact of hitting an issue. In addition to that, so long-term firms on average hired 12,000 more employees, on average. And in addition to that, so we're seeing that they were hit some during the financial crisis, but they were able to recover faster. And that's the thing that as we look at this, and that's a little bit of what we have to, I see that we talk about getting this seat at the table, but we need to understand that these CEOs and company directors, they are under pressure to make profit. And so we have to be thinking in terms, as we sell initiatives, as you sell initiatives for 2030, they're just trying to survive the next 2 years. They're trying to survive the next 5 years. And so we need to remember that and speak in terms of ROI, cash efficiency, how this is going. We need to think in financial terms, because I can tell you they have a boss and their board of directors is slamming them hard. So we do, like I said, it's not a matter, I don't think any CEOs come out there and say, well, we don't want our workforce prepared. What we got to think about is how we sell it, because they're under pressure from the top. They're being squeezed from us and being squeezed from the top. So, and remember, they're also on a time clock. Now, another interesting thing as I was digging into this McKinsey, Bain did a really interesting study of decision making. And I thought this was really, and they did an analysis between from before the pandemic up to 2018, and then they looked afterwards of what happened during this last 2 years. And I thought this was really interesting, because as we think about what we should be focusing on, with our employees, and we're going to talk about that. I've got some stats to show you. By the way, all of this should be, I see people taking pictures, all of this should be on the app. This was downloaded, so hopefully this should be, no, all right. My bad, I'm sure, all right. All of this, I'll send it out to everybody. So with the notes, I'll send it in PowerPoint. So take pictures away, but like I said, I'll send it as well. So the criticality of decision making. So those companies that were better at making decisions were almost 5.5 times better on revenue growth. They were 5.5 on EBIT growth. And also then on shareholder return, over 4 times better than those companies that were not as good at decision making. Now, what we saw during COVID is companies got better at it. Companies got better at it because of the fact that now we had to focus. It's sort of like you had to quit messing around, and you had to really focus, and you had to move that decision making up faster. So as I think about kind of what I would put at the top of my list of where I'm going to think about educating my C-suite, educating my leaders, is pushing that critical thinking, pushing that decision-making down to its lowest common denominator so that everything does not have to funnel up through the C-suite. The more that we can do that, we've got data that shows that you're going to have a better return on investment. You're going to make better revenue, you're going to make a better ROI, you're going to make better EBIT. So critical decision-making, critical thinking, critical decision-making. Now, we know about this skills gap, and like I said, this is a lot. I thought that this may be helpful because it's data you can take back to your CEO. It's data that you can come back and use to help force, and your CFO enlist them to get them on board. What we want to do is we want to go into that CEO or whoever's saying no, we want to go into them and armed with data so that we can say we really do need to be focusing on this. So right now, currently experiencing skills gap. So we already know, we know this, right? 65% of companies are already experiencing skills gap. Or certainly in the next 2 years, we're looking at 65%. But and the challenge is it keeps going from there. And what I would say is I actually feel like this is accelerating. Like I feel like this was 2020, taken last year. I think it's just accelerating. And so wherever you are on this continuum, understand that your companies are accelerating, how you are doing your job. And I thought this was interesting as well. We're seeing much more in physical and manual skills. We're seeing those hours over this next 10 years decreasing. We're also seeing basic cognitive skills. What's replacing that are things like emotional intelligence, that higher level of thinking, that social and emotional skills, because it's now not about, as I think, trucking. So the trucking business is going to be upended. It's going to be upended by solar power and the fact of AI. Because now you've got, instead of having a truck that's limited to 7.5 hours a day, you got a truck that charges during the day, during daylight hours, and can run autonomously and continuously. So now I don't need people driving truck. What I need is them fixing problems when something happens. So you're seeing those skills. Everything is trying to be automated. Who's been to a McDonald's lately? Yeah. You're not talking to a person. It's all AI. It's all AI to place your orders. And it's because they're pounding this through. And no other time, as we all know, the challenges, and by the way, I've been told I can't go past this line, or it's like it's electricity. When you go, like I said, anything that people can, like in this idea of this great resignation and the challenges that we're having finding people, every company's looking to replace people with AI. Go to Walmart. So Walmart raised wages. They were one of the first, certainly one of the folks who got on board with raising wages. But what they did was they reduced checkout. So now you got one person that's troubleshooting for 6 to 8 automatic checkout. That's what we're seeing. And so again, it is this idea, and I think you are uniquely qualified to be in this mix of this discussion because you know people. And it is your job to figure out how technology can replace them. As harsh as that is, this is about efficiency and understanding how much people cost to the bottom line to your P&L. So it is about figuring out what higher level skills we need and how we can take AI and instead replace so that we can, in some instances, provide better service, provide faster service, quicker, and a lot of people just like checking out on their own anymore. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to get in, get out, and be done with it, and I can move fast. So we're also seeing that customers are liking this idea. Now let's talk about this rise in digitization and AI. So it was already, things the areas that are rife with this. supply chain, customer channels. How do we get, again, back to that placing orders? I'm seeing, I use H&R Block for my taxes. It's all digital now. Until I get to the bitter end, I'm all sucking that stuff in some computer system. And I'm like, hi, it's Bob. And I'm like, come on, Bob. Stop. And then we had a conversation. I thought, well, this is all right. I also have a conversation every day with Alexa, so I thought, wow, I'm weird. So employee interaction and collaboration. And see, this is why I think that we're so uniquely qualified for this. Because remember, like we've all been through conversations of outsourcing benefits. Like we did that years ago. We did that years ago. We did years of rolling out automated reception, rolling out automated, signing up for benefits, signing up for other, your other employee benefits. So I feel like this is why I feel so strongly that we need to be in this AI game. So as you think about preparing yourself for what's needed, this really is, what technology magazines are you reading? What is your CEO reading? Are you reading things like the Wall Street Journal or other whatever publications that talk about your industry and can give you ideas on how to automate where you can, where you can automate? A lot of hospitals are looking at doing about bringing in automation of cleaning because of the fact that it's so critical, as we well know. So where is it? What do you need to do? What are your customers reading? What are your competitors reading that may give them a competitive advantage at figuring out AI and digitization better, quicker, faster than you? This is, again, where you can uniquely come in and be a part of this conversation and or lead it. And we always say we want that seat at the table, right? We know we want that seat at the table. We deserve that seat at the table. But you do have to be prepared to come in there and talk about what's going on in the world. And I'm not talking about the world of HR. You need to know that because that's your job. What I'm asking you is you need to know the world of your business. Meaning end to end, how do you make money? How do you make money end to end? Because it's in that of understanding raw material coming out and a clicker, raw material coming in and a clicker coming out, that you can come in and say, I have an idea. I have an idea. Now we're also seeing, increased hiring by role. We're certainly seeing a lot of, certainly in this idea of workplace safety, right? A lot more in that areas, safety, health concerns, artificial AI, 35%. We're seeing, again, we know that, but again, we're seeing big numbers in health and safety. Internet, digital customer experience, this whole, CX, I think they call it, customer experience is really raging in there. And we do that so that we can get more customers in. And I remember, I helped to found a company, and we bought we bought Home Shopping Network. It was called IAC. We bought Home Shopping Network. We bought Ticketmaster. We bought Expedia. We bought Match. It didn't help me get a job, which I'm still angry about. A date. Although dating does feel like a job. Sorry, a little personal side there. It's the end of the day. When we bought Ticketmaster, we bought Home Shopping Network, and they were slamming it with orders. This is still when you had to call somebody. You didn't have it on your clicker on your TV and all of this, so pre all of that. And you actually had to call somebody. And I'm telling you what, Home Shopping Network was incredible. Now we buy Ticketmaster. So Home Shopping Network's located in Florida. We bought Ticketmaster, and it was a complete disaster. I mean, a disaster. You get on there, people would be on there for an hour. Like, it was terrible at the customer service that we got. That's what drove. And I led that. I drove that to go online. We paid more to get that rascal online because of the fact that the turnaround time and people answering phones was horrific. And I'm telling you, we paid a boatload of money for it. It was the best thing we ever did. We literally made our money back in about a month. And it was not me who proposed all those high fees. So again, we're seeing a lot more trending, increased hiring by role. So if your company's not in it now, chances are when you go back to the office, the key is how do we get those folks on board now, particularly if you're looking at health and safety. We're also seeing demographic shifts. And this is, I think, the most challenging. And I have to admit, I have not gotten the 2000 from the last Census Bureau yet, so this is still from 17. But there's just, the Bain's projection is there's not a ton, like the growth is just low. And we've seen that, right, with COVID. Like the thought was, there's going to be an explosion of babies. That hasn't been the case. Hasn't been the case. So it is interesting, and we're going to feel that in 17 years, 18 years. Another big trend, who's hiring more gig workforce than they ever have? Who's hiring more gig? Not a ton. Is this it? 4 people? All right. So all right, there we go. All right, so we're seeing that certainly executives are thinking more in terms of trying to bridge the gap of looking at a gig workforce. And I think it's going to be interesting, the experiment we're running right now, the nightmare experiment we're in the middle of right now, of people working from anywhere and everywhere. And we're going to have to be prepared for that because people are quitting. People are quitting if you're going to force them to go back in the office. And so interesting. So we need to think about things like, will we have to go gig? And or how do we create the culture that we want? We're going to have to be, like, it's easier when we're all in the same space. But now we really have to be much more intentional about culture growth in the way that we want, because I can tell you most CEOs are thinking, I need everybody in the office. And the challenge is, who's going to pay for that? We're going to pay for that. Everybody's going to pay for it, but we're going to do nothing but recruiting because of this. So we need to think about how that is certainly going to be an argument. And how do we manage that? The other piece that I'm seeing is certainly salaries. So salary.com in August, like 3 weeks ago, just came out with their latest data. They do lots of great surveys, and one of the things that they're saying is that this idea of, like, a lot of us are doing bonuses, right? Doing bonuses. Who's doing bonuses now if you get people come in? Yeah. And so that's not unusual and everybody's doing it. Like McDonald's is doing it, Walmart's doing it, Starbucks is doing it. And what they're saying is that idea of bonuses is probably not a long-term strategy. There's this thought that this is going to go, that it's going to go away and be replaced instead by higher salaries. That's what's going to drive being able to get a workforce that stays around for longer periods. So like I said, it just came out like 3 weeks ago in August. They have some really interesting data, and it's certainly a data point on the salary side. And we're also saying, look, number of freelancers is just ramping up. And I think that it's because of people are looking at the fact that I just don't want to work anymore. I don't, that idea of, it used when I started, you kind of stayed at a company forever. And when I quit at 11 years, it was like, what? And now I look at a resume and I'm like, oh my God, they've been there 2 years. We got a lifer here. Whoa. Right? It's like, yeah, let's get this person before somebody else gets them. Yeah. So we got to be thinking in terms like that idea of 5 years, that's out the door. I couldn't imagine that. Yeah, exactly. I'm feeling the love here, right here, or something in there. So prior to COVID, 55% of the world's population lived in urban areas or cities. In the United States, 82% lived in cities, lived in urban areas. So that certainly means that can be a challenge now that, is a challenge if you didn't happen to be in Chicago or New York or other big cities like this. This is why If we can convince our C-suite that this could be a competitive advantage if people work from wherever, and we can still get them within our company culture, this can actually potentially be to our advantage. Because we're certainly seeing lots of cities that the numbers have gone down. And so now I think that'll probably rebound. Everybody likes going to New York, right? They're already rebounding, but not to the level that they thought, and not yet. So if we can come in and think about how to be creative if we're not in an urban area. Now, all right, so that's a lot of data. Like I said, a lot of data. Now it's like, all right, Val, my head's about to blow up, please. Now let's talk about what we do about this. Where do we go from here? Part of this is having a plan and knowing where you're going. So, and the key is I need you to get that seat at the table. I need you to be in those conversations about where is the company going. And as HR folks, we need to, I don't want to hear the no police. I said this earlier, if anybody saw my Smart Stage thing, I don't ever want to see, HR is there. You are an organization, you are a department that helps the organization flow. And if that means we got to fire somebody, then we got to fire somebody. And if that means, and I would ask the question, how much is this person costing us? I don't come back, my first question is not, did you write them up? My first question is, how much are they costing us? That's what I want to know. What is their being on board costing this organization? Because if it may be justified to hand them a check walking out the door, depending on their role. If they're in a sales role, first question I'm going to ask. Guaranteed. But I ask that of every role. I ask that, what's the receptionist costing us for doing a poor job? And I want to know that because now I'm going to talk about ROI of walking them out now, regardless of the situation. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not going to come back and talk, and the next on my hit list is that manager, so I'm going to pound them. and so don't think they're getting off scot-free, but as the keeper of people, I need to be the keeper of good people. And I need to get rid of poor performers quickly because they are costing your company money. They're costing your company, they're costing your managers time because they're spending more time trying to get them up, trying to get their performance up. So rethink, and this is why when we talk about knowing where you're going, I want you in those strategic conversations adding value to that conversation. Talking about, I don't want to, because it's about CHROs come in with solutions, not problems. They come in with solutions. And it is, so if somebody comes and say, oh, we're expanding the product line. All right, where is it? What is it? How can we look at gig workforces? How can we look at, what do we have to do to make this happen? I don't want to hear straight from the start, oh gosh, boy, that's going to be tough. We're having problems hiring now. Let me go back and look into this. This product line makes sense for us. Can we automate it? Can we pull existing people over? Give me some time to look at it. Then you can come back and lead out with solutions and say, here's the risks to my idea. But you're coming in with solutions and then balancing that against the risk of not hitting it. And that's where I would then say to my managers, we've got, all right, so we're going to need X amount of people. Let's talk about what in our product line, is there anything that's not really making money? Is there anything that we need to retire and move those people over? Can we incentivize people to pick this up as well if we're looking at new sales? These are all ideas on how we can retool, repurpose people, retrain them, move them over, or the fact of, you know what, I got an idea. I think what we can do is, we've got these assistants. Let's train them to be salespeople. So at Oxygen Media, I helped found the Oxygen channel after IAC, and we trained the junior salespeople because we weren't making money fast enough. And when you're burning money like this, I can literally look at the checkbook and see every month exactly when we run out of money. So we trained up everybody. Everybody in that organization was selling. If they picked up a call, they were selling. So these are ideas that you can bring into the table. This is how we get that, because we need to know where we're going, and we need to be a part of that conversation. And then once you are, now it's about making a plan. And yeah, we know about, developing employees, but don't talk in terms of training. Talk in terms of the ROI that they're going to bring. You train employees so that you get more out of them. Speak in terms of cost benefit when it comes to training. Because this is why how to sell more, how to get more product out the door, how to answer questions better. This is how we sell training. This is why we train. It's not to train just because we feel good. It's also to come in. Now, the flip side of that is our employees do want training, right? They do want training and they want it to be personal. So we have to weigh that out. I get that, but I typically keep that within. I keep that within my department of the millennials or Gen Z or others that want training. I'll keep that internal, but when I'm talking big company programs, I am thinking, I certainly, doesn't mean I wouldn't push it if I can't do an ROI, but I always ask that question of can I attach it to the P&L? And if I can, then I need to do it. Partner with trade schools, universities. Let me tell you, anybody in the university system, anybody in school systems, taking a bloodbath right now. Let me tell you, this is a tough business. Tough business. And it's because of the fact that people are asking the fact of, do I want to go to a 4-year degree? Do I want? So how do I, even if that, and how can I support? One of the things that I looked at with a company was they're paying for any education you want. Now it is that there is a set amount of time and there's a set dollar limit so that we don't get people going to school for 7 years. But if you wanted to get a degree, even if that degree was not in your chosen field, a lot of companies actually are doing that right now. Or certainly bigger companies, right? But the key that why they're doing that is because I'm hoping it takes you 2 to 4 years to get that doggone degree, and I would call that a win. I would call that a win nowadays. Call that a win nowadays because chances are somebody's going to roll. But partner with those trade schools, with universities. So I'm working in New Orleans with a company called Nochi. It's a brand new, so Delgado there's a couple schools in New Orleans or surrounding area that have some of the best culinary schools outside of like the fancy dancy ones in New York and all of this, and in the Cordon Bleu in Paris and all that. So Delgado's program, our local trade school, it's somewhere between 2 and 4 years. Nochi that just tried to launch like the month before COVID hit, they're giving it to you in 24 weeks. 24 weeks, you are going to walk out prepared to walk into a kitchen. And it's amazing at the enrollment. So again, think creatively. Reach out. Those folks in universities and schools should be on your Rolodex. Boy, am I aging myself. Anybody who's under the age of like 40, they're like, man, I'm out of here. That girl, she's ancient. Partner with high schools. How can you partner with a high school to give high school students college credits to hopefully get them out, to help them develop an associate degree? Or to get credits towards an associate degree, that they go into a program that you're sponsoring at your local university or school. Where do you think they're going to come in and hire into? Got a better chance of coming into you. It's no guarantee, but you got a better chance. So we need to think creatively. And the great thing is, I always said, let's get them in. So my undergrad's in mechanical engineering. Born and raised in Indiana, and I work with Rolls-Royce. I work for Rolls-Royce, the aircraft engine side. We went into high school. I wanted kids going in there, that's whole STEM, this issue getting STEM. We went in and started bringing them into Rolls-Royce and tried then help them fill out applications, all of these other tools, so that they would come back and join our intern or co-op program. And we had a staggering success rate at that because they were already in the system, already in the system. Now, this has been one of the most interesting things to me. It's this idea of finding purpose. I'm still looking for my purpose, I can tell you that. Anybody, I can tell you, millennials started it, Gen Z is demanding it. 2/3 of US-based employees surveyed said that COVID-19 has caused them to reflect on their purpose in life. My receptionist at Oxygen, she's now 40, we sold Oxygen 14 years ago. And she went to an organization, she's just outside of COVID, she's been talking, wanting to leave, wanting to do something different. She's 42, she just quit and is going to Spain to teach English as a second language. And she is beyond thrilled, scared. Everybody is looking for purpose in life anymore. Because something about, certainly over this last year and a half, has drawn us to the fact that life is short. So we need to, as we think about this, what is your purpose? What is your purpose? Nearly half said they're reconsidering what they do because of the pandemic. Millennials were 3 times more likely to rock and roll, that they're reevaluating work, and Gen Z is only more to that point. So as we think about this idea that purpose on the outside of work, purpose from work, we want to try purpose from the organization. Because those organizations that can show some sort of purpose, you're not, did anybody ever see, gosh, what was that guy who always does the work, he's like the guy who got the dirty jobs with Mike Rowe. So Mike Rowe went into Home Shopping Network. Has anybody seen this? So he went into Home Shopping Network to interview to be an on-air talent, selling stuff. And they gave him a pencil and said, sell me that pencil. And his comment was, this may look like a pencil, but what this is your dreams. This allows you to write down your hopes and your dreams. So this is a gateway to your future. It's a pencil. But he's not wrong. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. So at Oxygen Media, I had 55 people working for me. I asked the facilities department, all right, Anthony, how are you going to, new goals, how are you going to help the sales department achieve their sales goals? His comment to me was, well, I'm not in sales, Val. Where do those salespeople sit? Where do they walk in? What do they touch every day? 90% of what they do is in the office or here, and that's you. So what have you done today to make sure that sales has no issues? Now I'm connecting him to the purpose. He's not a facilities person. He is directly connected to helping this organization make sales. That is a shift. I am giving him purpose. I'm giving him purpose. When we first started, we got shut off by Staples. Couldn't order any supplies from Staples. And I'm like, who the heck gets shut off by Staples? I mean, it's really embarrassing. And so I called up our rep and I'm like, hey, Diana, sorry to bother you, but I can't seem to order things. And she goes in there and she goes, well, Val, you haven't paid any bills. And I'm like, well, imagine that. Yeah. Imagine that. So then I go up to the AP clerk. Her name's Amy. So she is the last person that these checks come through. She's the person who hits the button that the checks print out, spit out, stuffs them in there and sends them off. I said, hey, Amy, so Staples shut us off because we're not paying bills. She goes, yes, I know. I went, oh, okay, all right. Okay, all right. So why haven't, I'm just out of curiosity, why haven't we been paying bills? Well, the managers aren't getting them back to me. And I'm like, you know what, you're right. There is zero chance that Amy can cut that check unless a manager comes back and signs off on that rascal, because now she's in trouble. So she's right. And I asked her, I said, what do you think happens to us, particularly as a new organization, when we get shut off from Staples? And she goes, well, it can't be good. She goes, I'm not exactly sure, but it can't be good. And I said, you are absolutely right. I said, it affects our credit rating. It affects right now we had a sweetheart deal with them. We used to be able to pay in 120 days. They deliver overnight, we pay in 120 days. That affects that. So that affects, because now they're asking us, now they want a credit card. And we're buying, we're buying millions of dollars of stuff. And so what we're talking about is you're not cutting checks. You're helping create the PR, the image of Oxygen Media. That's your role. Your role is to make sure our managers don't do anything stupid that affects our image, the brand image of Oxygen Media. Because let me tell you, saying that you're the official supplier for Oprah Winfrey's Oxygen Media only goes so far. You gotta pay people. And so it was interesting. The moment that I was able to connect her with purpose, to give her this purpose from the organization, she then proactively went out there and taught people how to sign off on bills. What questions do you have? She was now actively and would bring to my attention if somebody isn't, if we're in any sorts of issues. So it was because she had purpose. She was no longer this cog in a wheel of just hitting the button to throw out checks. Amy eventually got up to senior director within Oxygen Media in the 8 years we were around. We sold to NBC Universal. She went over. She was one of two out of the finance department who went over to NBC Universal, and she's going to retire as a VP. That's the power that you have within us. And when we talk about this purpose, now, how many people had somebody millennial come up and say, "I want to be a CEO. I want to be a CEO." And my comment is, you betcha you'll be a CEO. You won't be at Oxygen because there's about 50 people in line. Going to be about 50 people in line, but let me tell you what, you will be a CEO. And it could be next year. You betcha it could be, because the chances are they may start their own company. So if you will hang with me, I will give you the skills to be a good CEO, because there's a lot of lousy ones out there. And you want to be the person who inspires, who makes money, who's around for the long haul, who does good social justice, who does all of these things. So I don't look at that and go, oh. I look at that and go, this is somebody who's motivated. And let me tell you what, I'm going to channel that energy and that enthusiasm, and I'm going to channel that, and I'm going to say, you hang with me, and I'll teach you how to be a good CEO. And then when you're ready to go, I'll be your reference. Purpose. Are you driving purpose in your people? And I always like to say, I don't know if anybody watched Oxygen Media. We made bad television. Please. Please. I mean, our highest rating shows was The Bad Girls Club. You can imagine what that is. And the other one was Snapped. It's these chicks like snapping off and like killing their husbands and boyfriends. Those were our highest shows. So what I would say is when you look at that and you go, gosh, oh, that sounds so fun to be in television. Television is a grueling, and we're making bad TV at that. And I can tell you, I can come in and I can attach purpose to it, though. I can make somebody feel important. And that's important. That's critical if we want to come back in and think about retaining employees and moving into this workforce 2030, thinking over this next decade, because I'm telling you, if we thought that connecting purpose now was tough, everybody now comes in and expects it. Everybody now comes in and expects it. So what else? Let's create a learning environment. We need to create an environment where learning is embedded into everything. So I talked today about succession planning. I think succession planning is one of the most important things that you can do. Now, I'm not saying that I don't want people doing duplicate roles. I don't want that. Whoa. Whoop. Oh, whoa. All right. I don't want people doing duplicate roles. What I want them to know is I want them to know 25%. So that if somebody walks out the door, we don't walk in there and go, "Oh my God, do you have the password to all the customers?" What's the process? I don't know. I need somebody to know 25% so that we can keep the doors off, and then I'm going to help them in the fire hose of learning the other 75%. So we need that learning environment. We need a written out succession plan of who's going to go. And because of that, then we need developmental plans. Don't start with everybody. Start with your rock stars and start in the people who are closest to money or clients. You can't do everybody. Start with those people who do money, who are selling, or those people who are closest to doing CX, customer service, and or those people who are making your product. Now it does start at the top. The tone for everything for a learning culture really starts with your CEO. Now I would say, look, there's terrible CEOs out there, terrible bosses out there. If your boss happens to be one of them, I'm sorry. But what I would say is I would take care of myself and my people while I continue to try. And what I would do is I would go after her or his direct reports. Walk in there with a stacked deck. If the CEO won't go after training, go after your head of sales. Get head of sales to agree with what you're proposing. Propose it in terms of money. Go after the CFO to say yes to it. Go after the customer experience. Don't go after everybody. Don't go after the lawyers. No lawyer's going to say yes. Go after, forgive me for any lawyers in here. Go after those people who are closest to the money and get them on your side so you walk in with a stacked deck. Learning never ends. That's the challenge, is that we have to remember that learning never ends. And this is why this idea of development plans and succession plans are just so important anymore. And it's in that absence of learning that people get restless and go bag it. I'm going to go to Spain and teach English as a second language. So that never ends. Now, 93% of employees, and I know I'm beating this to death, but this matters to employees. Staggering numbers out there that if you invest in employees' careers, if you care, even if that means moving them out of your organization, they will stay longer because of the fact that you care about something that they care about. So that's what we're going for, is getting them to say, now if somebody wants to be so we had a woman who worked for me, who wanted to go into public relations. That's not me. So what I did was I allowed her to work 4 to 8 hours. Now, she couldn't I took that into account. I didn't slam her and give her 50 hours worth of work just to make her work harder. I took that into account. And I worked with her on so that she had a full load in my department, but she was still able to explore other options. She stayed with us till the day we sold. And it's that sort of stuff of thinking outside the box. And the key is by embracing. And you look at that and you go, well, she's an oddball. No, what it was is, I'll tell you, she was darn efficient. Knowing that her dreams, her hopes and dreams are this close. She never once missed a deadline for me because she knew that not everybody had this opportunity. So that's what you get by taking a moment to say, I will help you in your journey. I will help you in your journey. Make it accessible. So we do, at Oxford, we had learning libraries. You could check out books. We did book clubs. We had the CEO, we had the C-suite. All of us would go around that each month somebody would come in and have an opportunity. You'd have a lunch and learn. A lunch and learn, and the first 20 people who signed up got to have lunch with the COO. So again, we made it easy, we made it accessible, and it was during the day. So these ideas of learning, like you're getting this virtual learning, although I don't think we can say that. Who else gets to see it? Nobody. Just kidding, SHRM. I'm bounced out. But the key is how many of you will go back and share what you have learned here with your staff? So how many of you can make it feel like they could taste it of what it was like to attend SHRM, and yet they'd never stepped out of your office? Make them feel like they were here. That's how we make, and making this accessible, making it easy. So we're doing, lots of online options. How can you incorporate that and make it fun and interesting? This is very important, build in time during the workday. Look, we just can't ask employees. Everybody's working. You're going to ask them to work. All right, I'm asking you to work 40 hours or 35 or 45 or whatever it is. Now I'm going to ask you to do more training, but I'm going to make it outside the workday? Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Who's trying to read a book, I was thinking, I'm going to read a book on the plane out here. I woke up, I'm like drooling all over myself. I'm like, well, that didn't work. So make it throughout the day. Make it easy, make it fun to learn, make it shareable. What did you learn? Have people, so if you have others go to conferences, if you have others read books, let them lead the book club. Ask them what would be interesting. What do you want to learn about? Involve folks in learning, and it's amazing who steps up to the plate. So it's always about creating a pathway. Creating a pathway for employees to advance, and the key is we need to train our managers on how to move folks up the ladder. And I say this, so Anthony Guerrero was my number 2 at Oxygen. Absolutely amazing employee. Worked for me for a number of years. He's CEO of a company now, a nonprofit company, and saving the world. Bad TV, saving the world, okay, whatever. So Anthony wanted, in the beginning when we were first getting started, he wanted more leadership acumen. Leadership is a tough thing to define, right? So what we agreed to is that, so we're spending about $55 million getting a studio set up, building out offices and getting a studio set up to do live shooting. And I said to him, so we are in this meeting every week with the C-suite, and going over numbers, going over what drawings, blah, 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 all of this, where supplies are, everything. And Anthony sits against the wall, and I'm doing all the talking. So we agreed that leadership is leading that meeting and me sitting against the wall. And so what we did is the next meeting we had, I said, I need you to say 2 sentences in this meeting. It can't be yeah, or I agree. They have to be sentences that move the conversation forward. I'm giving this example because I'm teaching somebody how to learn leadership. I can't go in there and just tell Anthony, just lead this section. You can't do that. Your managers don't know that either. I'm in HR, so I know it. So it is a matter of I need you to do 2 sentences. And by the way, we put the agenda together. So where in here are you going to do 2 sentences? Before we go in there, walk me through what your contribution is going to be. All right, Anthony, now, I know you're afraid, but you're going to have to whip those 2 sentences out, or I'm calling on you and telling you, do you have anything to add? So step to the plate and do it. He did it. Now the next time I need you to do 6. Then I need you to lead a section. It can be small. It can be big. It can be whatever you want. Each time, and we had a set that in 14 weeks I would be against the wall. At 10, I was against the wall. At 12, I was out of the meeting altogether. And Anthony went on. He could have taken my place. He knew that I wasn't going anywhere. And I'm like, dude, you're ready. You're better at this than I am, but I'm not going anywhere. Not going anywhere. So what can I help you to do? He's got a digital degree at Columbia and went into a different department within Oxygen. Was able to get him a lateral. Because to keep that growing learning, to keep that learning and that growth going beyond what was best for me. So teach our managers how to do that. So give employees a seat at the table on decisions that affect them. We want a seat at the table. We want a seat at the table. Make sure employees are there too, particularly on things that affect them. Because a lot of times we don't do that. Help employees. So we talk about, I've been pushing you here a little bit about seeing the big picture. What I would say is I want every employee to understand. First thing on my list, I always do financial training. It's required at Oxygen. It's required at every company I've ever been to. Because of the fact that I want somebody understanding, if you buy 5 widgets because you want 4 sitting in the supply closet just in case, what is the cost to your bottom line? What's the cost to your bottom line? My assistant had 4 line items on my G&L. She had 4 line items. She had parties and office supplies. As she went, she got more. She got more money because that was her money to control. And this is the key of her understanding and seeing and being able to be able to contribute financially, because I want every employee there going out and turning out the lights. Mentoring is one of the most employee favorable, like when you do surveys, everybody wants a mentor. Everybody wants a mentor, and yet few companies have formal programs. And it's a great way to help retain employees because it gives people an out for other ideas versus just yours. Up your leadership skills. Require your managers to up leadership skills. Because I'm telling you, if people feel like on a treadmill, they're rolling. And I know we talk about SMART goals. I know we've talked about that. We beat that to death. Now the key is if people don't like SMART goals, then sell it another way. They think it's some weird, freaky HR thing. Instead of the fact of understanding that if you do this, it becomes a question of did you accomplish it or did you not? And it doesn't matter where they're at. SMART isn't working because our managers just aren't on board. Figure out a way to sell it a different way so that managers are less concerned about where it's being done and instead focused on results, because results are what lead us to the next level. We know require your managers to give feedback. I know that's bad, but I tell you what we got to do, we got to teach them how to do it. Nobody likes giving difficult feedback. So it's not a one and done. You continually have that conversation. Now I'm going to go through these because I'm getting the hook. Getting the hook here. So up your communication game. I say this: give equal time to all employees. Even your remote employees, have lunch with them, even if it's 10 o'clock your time and it's 2 o'clock their time, because you're in California and they're in New York. Have lunch. You're having a Danish, they're having lunch. It's about what your employees need to hear, not what you want to tell them. Ask your employees, what do you need more of? What do you need less of? And you do that individually and as a team. I know exactly what my employees want to hear. Be prepared to talk about money. When I first graduated, I was told from HR that if I ever told my salary, I would be fired. Let me tell you, those days are long gone. Everybody's talking about salary. Do something about diversity. This is going to kill you in the long run. Be prepared to listen. We talk about active listening, you actually have to do it. Be prepared to explain why you do something. That shouldn't bother you. Shouldn't bother you at all, because you should know why we're doing it. I ask my employees well, look at that, they're cutting me off. My goodness. Boy, I'll tell you what, they're getting brutal here. Visibility bias is real, meaning that we're more biased towards people who we see versus people who are remote. So talk about that, train for that. Remote, we've talked about that culture. Leading in a hybrid environment. Hey, they can barely lead when they're in the office. Forgive me, are you kidding? We're expecting them to figure out how in a hybrid? That's funny. Static updates don't work anymore. Change up your meetings. I don't do updates in meetings. We update on Google Doc. Our meetings are collaboration only. What do you need help with? Where's the stat? Where are you on time? We talk collaboration. That's what my meetings are. And people come to them because they're much more interesting. Involve employees, and we talk about mentoring in different age groups. Provide recognition. People, you get what you reward, right? You get what you reward. So provide recommendation. This guy, he's killing me. I'm not looking, I'm hiding. I'm hiding from you, Zach. I'm hiding. I got 1 minute. Goodness sakes. All right, reward employees who make learning. Here we go. Thank you, Zach. Holy cow. That be some pressure. All right, so I got a lot of goodies to send you, and I'm sorry that these aren't posted. I don't know why, but if you sign up on this QR code, that I get an email that says that you signed up, and I'll send you all of these slides with the notes and everything like that. So Thank you so much again for joining me. Thank you. And I'm not running out if anybody has any questions. Take that, Zach. Thanks again, everybody.
Wrote it down.